In this lecture, we are going to see the objective of testing. Let's have a look into the first objective of this syllabus. Just remember, you need to know these objectives as question will come directly from this topic since it is marked as K1. Before we jump to the objectives, you must know these important terms, which we are going to use in this lecture. We should know what is the meaning of work product and test item. Work product means output. Let's understand this. These are the steps followed during development of software in an organization. First step is to get user requirement. Then we develop system requirement. Then comes the global design. Next is detailed design. And the last step is implementation, where software is developed. When we say work product, in the system requirement stage, the output is system requirement. In the global design and detailed design stage, output is design document. And in the implementation stage, output is code. So keep in mind, work product means output. Test item, which is also known as test object, is any document or component or system which is under test. Let's see the same example to understand this. In the requirement stage, requirement is work product. If this has to be reviewed, then requirement is referred to as test item. Similarly, if we are in implementation stage, output of this stage is code. And if we want to perform testing on it, then code is out_test item here. So output of the stage is called work product, and if testing is performed on it, then it is called test item. So we can say any document or component or system which is under test is called test item. This is the first objective: to evaluate work products such as requirements, user stories, design, and code. We already know work product means output, and output of the requirement stage is requirement document, where all the requirements are mentioned. Now, as per the first objective, we have to evaluate this work product. Let's see an example to understand this. Suppose this is the customer requirement. For web page, when the login details are given, the next page shall load in few milliseconds, and if login details are not correct, then show a pop-up. But if you look carefully, this requirement is not complete. There are open points. First, how much time? Second, which page will load next? Third, what is the pop-up content? These are the questions which need clarification. So this is why it is necessary to evaluate work products such as requirements, user stories, design, and code. Second objective states, to verify whether all specified requirements have been fulfilled. Let's understand this. We already know this requirement. Now, we need to see if these requirements are fulfilled in the engineering requirement. After analyzing the customer requirement and asking question, we finally have the engineering requirement, which includes the following points. First, login is correct, go to next page. Second, next page shall load in 500 milliseconds. Third, next page shall contain the personal information. Fourth, if the login detail is not correct, pop-up shall appear. 5. Pop-up message, password or user ID is incorrect. Like this, in each stage, we have to verify whether all specified requirements have been fulfilled. Third objective is to validate whether the test object is complete and works as the users and other stakeholders expect. Test object means object under test, and it is defined as the component or system to be tested. When you are in requirement stage, requirement is your test object, and in design stage, design is your test object, and at the implementation stage, code is your test object. Now let's continue with our example. As per third objective, we need to provide input to the test object and check the output if it fulfills the stakeholder's requirement. That means once the software is ready, we need to execute it to see if it's fulfilling the customer's requirement. Since here we are executing the code, so this comes under validation. So third objective is to validate whether the test object is complete and works as the users and other stakeholders expect. Fourth objective is to build confidence in the level of quality of the test object. Let's understand this. Suppose we are in the requirement stage. Then requirement is our test object. And if we clarify our requirement in this stage itself, instead of clarifying it during the implementation stage, then we can build confidence in our requirement and finally in our product. That is why fourth objective is to build confidence in the level of quality of the test object. Now let's discuss objectives 5 and 6 together. Objective 5 is to prevent defects, and objective 6 is to find failure and defects. Let's understand these two objectives. If you find defects in the requirement stage, you prevent these defects to go to the next stage. Now the sixth objective comes into picture. We need to find the defects or failure in the same stage in which they are tested. Otherwise, defect will travel to the next stage, and it will be more costly to fix. This is one of the important objectives of testing, to prevent defects, to find failure and defects. The seventh objective is to provide sufficient information to stakeholders to allow them to make informed decisions, especially regarding the level of quality of the test object. When we find defects, it's not necessary that we will fix all of it before release, but what we can do is to provide sufficient information to the stakeholders regarding defects and risks associated with it. The eighth objective is to reduce the level of risks of inadequate software quality. For example, previously undetected failures occurring in operation. This objective is related to the 5th and 6th objective. We need to find the defect in the same stage in which they are introduced. Otherwise, it will be found in the operation. If fault is found during operation, it can have adverse effect. That's why it is necessary to reduce the level of risks of inadequate software quality. The 9th objective is to comply with contractual, legal, or regulatory requirements or standards and to verify the test object's compliance with such requirements or standards. Sometimes you need to fulfill the legal requirements. For an example, if you are working for automotive industry, then you need to fulfill ISO 26262 standard for safety critical requirement. Till now, we discussed general testing objectives, whereas the objectives are context dependent. To understand this, let's have a look into two different testing levels, component level and acceptance level. When you perform testing at component level, your objective is to find as many defects as possible so that they are not found during operational use. Whereas if you are in acceptance level, your objective is to check if system works as expected. So in different level of testing, the objective changes. Before we end this lecture, let's have a look at the important points. 1. To evaluate work products, such as requirements, user stories, design, and code to verify whether all specified requirements have been fulfilled, to validate whether the test object is complete and works as the users and other stakeholders expect, to build confidence in the level of quality of the test object, to prevent defects, to find failures and defects, to provide sufficient information to stakeholders to allow them to make informed decisions, especially regarding the level of quality of the test object, to reduce the level of risk of inadequate software quality, for example, previously undetected failures occurring in operation, to comply with contractual, legal, or regulatory requirements or standards, and to verify the test object's compliance with such requirements or standards. The objective of the testing is context-dependent.